Good morning, Bethea. If I had to give this sermonic moment a title, I would call it I'm Grateful, but, and I'm Grieving. Now, before I get started, I want to tell my cousins in the room that if throughout this sermon I use any nomenclature in which you are unfamiliar, just look straight ahead and nod occasionally. And you can ask us at community lunch what it meant, okay? Okay. Wake Div, truly it is an honor and a privilege to stand before you all today. To think that 952 days ago, I entered into this very room, sitting in those seats, on the day when I was introduced to the idea of spiritual fluidity, given permission to explore my theological curiosity and encouraged to embrace the framework of Dietrich Bonhoeffer as we were charged to embody and live out this idea of life together. Looking back, for some of us, we embraced the concept right away, while others of us learned that sometimes doing life together is a painful process that requires the mercy of forgiveness and enough space for the grace of growth. Now, one thing I will say is that being in this arc taught me how to bring my whole self to this space and not have to justify my humanity nor apologize for the intersection of my lived experience, but to live in the tension of the text. Yes, I was fulfilling my grandmother's dream of attending the Wake Forest University, and I also had to live with the guilt of never having the opportunity to proudly represent one of the 107 HBCUs that my foremothers and forefathers shed blood to establish. Yes, Dr. Wilkes, I was awarded a full tuition scholarship, which made my colleagues who came before me loathe me, and I was also walking away from a lifelong career of education, and although not much, a stable salary that didn't classify me as an unemployed single mother. Yes, I would have the opportunity to rebuild my life after trauma, tragedy, and turmoil, and I would have to learn how to navigate the tumultuous trenches of the unspoken politics of attending a PWI where they don't share the sidewalk and sending me into a weekly therapy session just so I could show up again the next week and look at y'all. And yes, I know my face is plastered all over social media on every flyer and reel, and at times, not all the time, I feel like I'm losing my autonomy, my agency, and at other times, my authenticity. So I need your help, Wake Div. You see, while naming this sermon, I couldn't decide whether or not to use the word but or and. Let me unpack it, Dr. Hicks. To use the word but is to state a claim between two seemingly opposing clauses. But the second claim usually negates the first, making its statement more valid, more powerful, and more seemingly supreme, leaving the first claim a victim of eradication, extermination, and elimination. You know what? Never mind, I figured it out. So in the spirit of my foremother, the Reverend Dr. Bethea Hall, as I stand in the authenticity of my being, I'll just use the word and. After all, Dr. Sampson, who does it benefit if the primary cause is erased, but the latter is saved? So if I had to go back, Dr. K, to the day 952 days ago and answer the question of how do you feel now that you're here? I would say I'm grateful and I'm grieving. Because if I'm going to hold on to faith in this fractured world, I have to be honest about how I feel. grateful for the opportunity and grieving what life once was, grateful to meet new community and grieving the family members, the friends, the relationships, the connections that I wanted to bring along, not knowing that one day I would have to grieve the version of myself that I always knew. And I think that that's exactly what these four women in the text must be feeling. You know, the wives, the ones who are only mentioned briefly but are still there on the ark, a part of the story, expected to produce yet never given the human dignity of being acknowledged. Because when I read this Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, thank you, Dr. Neil Walls, I don't just see Noah and his sons, I also see the wives navigating the duality of being grateful for salvation and grieving the genocide of the innocent children outside of the ark. Because that's the beauty, Dean Hunt, of this program. And not only teaches you how to live in the complexities of your own life, but it also teaches you how to see the duality of the both and of others, of those who live in the margins, of those who are there but go unacknowledged, Dr. Shayna. So for the next few moments, if you'd allow me, I'd like to share with you a few things that I learned from the wives when I asked them about their experience of navigating gratitude and grief in the ark. Because if the experience of the women on the ark teaches us anything, I think it shows us that divine deliverance is rarely a clean escape. The first thing they shared with me was their experience of being treated as privileged from the outsiders while navigating the suffocation of oppression from the insiders. You see, from the outside, it looked as if they had made it, as if they were God's chosen ones who had found the golden ticket and now were on a one-way trip with Willy Wonka to the chocolate factory, privileged. While on the inside, they were pushed to the cracks and crevices of the planks of wood that housed the men and the animals, but didn't quite have enough space for them to exhale, emote, or even exist after all the excitement of their agency being stripped away, oppressed. From the outside, they looked like their favorite characters in a Disney parade, floating by, smiling and waving as if they had no care in the world, while those on the sidelines were facing eviction, ICE evasion, and extinction, privileged. While on the inside, the men took the parchment pages of the book of Jubilees, which housed the names of these suntan sisters. Because let's be honest, no other people's names are forgotten like those of the sisters. Just ask Breonna Taylor and Tatiana Jefferson. And they used the pages of this book as cottonelle for the camels, which, to be honest, I still don't know if they were really there or not. But that's not the point. The point is that oppression would rather waste resources and remove rights rather than distribute them to those the supremacists deem as unworthy, while at the same time assessing their worth by the title of the role in which they were sold into, being wives, privileged and oppressed. And I'm sure that if we were honest, some of us could empathize with these sisters, because in this arc, that's what it feels like for my siblings in the LGBTQIA+ community, who from the outside is told that it is safe for them to show up as their full selves, to only get here and be oppressed on the inside by the preferences of those who refuse to use their respective pronouns, privileged and oppressed. Who, for my melanated siblings, are told that they have access to all the resources like any other student of this prestigious university, the Wellbeing Center, the Intercultural Center, the Writing Center, the Center for Learning, Access, and Student Success, the Business Center, only to be carded by the same security guard when they're on campus after hours studying, privileged and oppressed. So yes, being on the ark requires a unique art of navigating the gratitude of being allotted certain privileges while simultaneously wiping away the tears of oppression. Yeah. And the second thing the sister shared with me was the complexity of navigating the chaos amongst this new calling. You see, being a part of this ark meant that they had a responsibility. a responsibility to co-create with the divine a new interpretation of this idea of doing life together. Now, I know Christian nationalism taught you to take dominion over things you deem as sinful and unclean. But thanks to Dr. G, what if we looked at the activity of the storm around us, the winds rushing through our minds, the waves of our emotions drowning our beliefs from an eco-womanist perspective, and realize that the flood is actually a mirror of what happens when the Imago Dei fail its duty of stewardship. Therefore, when we come into this knowledge of knowing better, it is an invitation for us to now do better. Yes, there's grief from the flood destroying your familiar foundation, the deconstruction of the monuments within your religion, the statues that you thought you couldn't live without, and the wiping away of structures you worship more than God. And yet, what if the chaos of all the creatures within this ark is part of a divine plan to serve as the salve for the bereaved heart of God in an opportunity for us to co-create something much more beautiful? Could it be that the ark was not just a way of escape from the sinfulness of the world, the pain of poverty, the disappointment of divorce, or the heartbreak of your halted career? But could it be that the ark was also a secluded opportunity for the doctrine of kinship to be reinstated, for us to be reminded that we need one another, not just for the survival of the fittest, but for the thrival of all God's creation? Could it be that this ark, Wake Div, was an opportunity for all of us to come together and live in proximity with those whom we would never touch otherwise? All of God's creation together, two by two, black and white, Hispanic and indigenous, queer and cisgender, trans and non-binary, English-speaking and multilingual, all of us in here together, called to navigate the chaos of this calling together. And it stinks in here. It's messy, because the reality is that to have a full human experience inside of the ark means that there may be defecation, there may be menstruation, and I'm sure there was some penetration, but all of it is necessary. And I promise you, it is good. Not because you were afflicted, that is actually part of the theology that the sisters hope you would let wash away, but that you chose to stay alive. Because just like in beginning, when God created all of creation out of the chaos of the unknown, something purposeful is being produced in and out of you too. Now that's the last thing the sisters wanted me to tell you. That the goal of this ark experience, Wake Div, is not about reaching an illusory promised land. And I hate to break it to you, but unlike the 8 in this narrative who exit the ark in a world supposedly washed clean for us, here we depart back into a world full of fracture. And at the end of this journey, there is no land flowing with milk and honey, not when outside of the ark 10 minutes down the street, my black and brown babies of Freedom School are still suffering from food insecurity. And at the end of this journey, there is no cattle on 1,000 hills that are yours, not when the Latino brothers, sisters, and siblings are still being hunted like cattle. The white picket fence, spouse, and 2.5 children American dream you were sold was just a nightmare on Elm Street meant to keep you asleep. Yet, just like these sisters, the wives of Noah, his sons, the mothers of the next generation, the one who would be fruitful and birth David, John the Baptist, the prophets, and later the Messiah, who'd be the blueprint for Jezebel, Deborah, Mary of Magdala, and my girl Fotini, the Samaritan woman at the well. We have all been positioned for purpose, positioned to birth something beautiful that will leave a legacy for generations to come, a generation that will hold the essence of our DNA, your queer DNA, your differently able DNA, your divergent DNA, and I'll be there if I spend all this time in this ark only to get out and commit the same 6 sins of harm to those who live unseen, unrecognized, and unheard. But we have been positioned to restore and reclaim the narrative of those whose names have been left out of the recording. Because to name is to acknowledge those who have been intentionally left out. To name is to validate the humanity of those who society, capitalism, and the convicted felon deem as less than worthy of recognition. So no, I won't leave the ark the same way I came. I'll leave full. I'll leave transformed. I'll leave grateful, and yet I'm still grieving. Not because I've gotten comfortable in the ark and with 952 days behind me and the idea of now exiting in 46 days brings me grief. But today, I'm grieving the fact that there are so many of those who are coming up behind me who seem to be disconnected from the heart of the ark. To see you come in and go out as if this experience is meant to be transactional and not interactional. To see some forget that this life of pro humanitate is for the purpose of justice, reconciliation, and compassion, I'm grieving. So to the up and coming lads being raised in this ark, I'll leave you one word of advice from the sisters. They told me this: don't jump ship before it's your time. I know you think you can swim. I know you think you can walk on water, but even Peter began to sink when he took his eyes off Jesus and thought it was his own divinity that kept him afloat. So stay in position. Stay within the confines of the ark, because there just may be some more that you need to throw overboard in the sea of forgetfulness before you enter into your purpose land. Then, as she concluded our conversation, Esmara, that was her name, Noah's wife, she sashayed over to the window, gazed upon the water, and began to sing one final tune as an anchor of hope. Though the storms keep on raging in my life, and sometimes it's hard to tell the night from day. Still, that hope that rises within is reassured as I keep my eyes upon the distant shore. I know she'll lead me safely to that blessed place she has prepared. This is what she said. But if the storms don't cease, and if the winds keep on blowing, my soul has been anchored in the Lord.
Thank you, Pastor Tyra.